This happened to me 12 years ago, when I was a really naive school kid. The more I reflect on it now, the more unsettling it becomes. I grew up in a small rural community, which was meant to be really safe. Lots of retirees and young families. I'm a trans man, but was a few years away from realizing that at the time, so I just looked like a young girl. My body had developed early, but despite the Jessica Rabbit curves, I was ridiculously baby-faced. The day this happened, I was wearing the ugly junior school uniform and had my hair in 2 plaits. Aside from the boobs, I probably looked about 10. My family lived about 10 miles out of the small town I went to school in, and since it was in the sticks, there was no public transport, and I was too young to drive. Normally I'd get the school bus home, but if I wanted to go to the public library after school, I would go there and wait for my mother to pick me up after she finished work. If anything went wrong there, I had nowhere to go. So on the day this happened, I had gone to the library alone and headed to the young adult section. It's very clearly aimed at teens, with posters and beanbags and those kinds of things. Normally there would be other kids there, sometimes families as well, but today there was only a middle-aged man sitting alone in one of the chairs. He instantly made me uncomfortable. It wasn't his appearance, which was dirty-looking, badly dressed, balding, overweight, and with dirty teeth. He didn't look homeless, just a big slob. But this space was clearly for teenagers and their families. He wasn't even reading or anything, just sitting there looking around like he was scoping the place out. His eyes were the scariest thing about him, bugging out of his head as he stared at me. I didn't want to be anywhere near this man. Quickly, I grabbed a few books off the shelf and went around the corner to sit in a chair in the adult fiction section. This section was also deserted. I popped open a book and tried to read, but a few seconds later I felt eyes upon me. I glanced up and saw him peeking at me through the bookshelves. He saw me looking and let out this eerie giggle, like he was a child caught while playing hide-and-seek. It made my skin crawl. Ignoring him, I went back to my book. Next thing I know, though, the creep was quickly approaching me. He sat down in the chair right next to me, so close I could smell stale sweat and cigarettes. Again, the whole place was deserted. I felt sick. He put his face up real close to mine and said, "Hello." His breath was disgusting. Still trying to ignore him, I gave a dismissive hi, not even looking up. This weirdo then proceeded to launch into his life story and talk at me non-stop for the next hour. I have no idea how much was true, of course. He talked about his stage parents with no explanation of what he meant. He talked about being in the military and how he was detained in a psychiatric institution. He told me he'd escaped and spent days living in the woods before they caught him. The whole time I was terrified. I wanted to get a librarian, but I was scared he might get angry and even turn violent. He had made it very clear he was psychologically unstable. At one point, he told me his name and asked for mine. I was panicking too much to give him a fake one. The worst part was when he asked me how old I was. Again, too scared to think of a lie, I told him I was 14. I hoped it would put him off, but nope. He brightened right up and said he'd wait until I was old enough to marry him. He said I was a good-looking girl, nice and a good listener. I'd make a very good wife for him. At that point, I hadn't even held hands with anybody. In a huge turn of luck, though, my phone started to ring. I instantly answered it. It was my mother telling me she was parked outside. Flooded with relief, I told her I'd be out in just a moment. Looking back, I should have stayed on the phone, but for some stupid reason, I thought I'd be in trouble if I told her about the man. I grabbed my things and told him my mother was here, and I had to go. My blood ran cold when he told me he'd seen me before and would be waiting for me to come back. I don't know why I didn't tell an adult. I think I was scared, both of getting into trouble and even more of him getting mad and doing something to me. I was so ill-equipped to deal with something like this, and probably hoped if I ignored it, it would go away. The next day, I did tell some friends at school. One told her mother, who was horrified. My friend had a lot of younger siblings, and they often went to that library as well. Often we went together, and they had driven me home before as well. That turned out to be my saving grace. I have no idea what would have happened otherwise. That day after school, my friend and her mother went to the library with the other siblings, as they were already planning to do. It turns out this creepy man really had been watching me very intently. He was back, and proceeded to approach the family and ask about me by name. The mother told him he needed to stop harassing young girls, and threatened to call the police. I'm still so grateful to that woman for standing up for me like that. Miraculously, it even seemed to work. I never went to the police, but I know I should have. I lived in that area for another 5 years, and somehow I never saw him again. This is by far the most scary experience I've had in my life, and it wasn't even me being stalked. It was my ex-girlfriend 4 years ago. We were both 18 and had just started a community college nearby. Our schedules were pretty similar. We intentionally put 2 of our 5 classes with each other, and took lunch off at the same time so we could eat with a group of our mutual friends in our social group, and we saw each other quite a lot as well. Well, a month and a half into school, my girlfriend starts to tell me that she's noticed a guy who's following her around campus. She described him as someone who looks like he works there, whatever that meant. I asked her to recount some of the particular instances, but the only one she told me was that he waited outside the library for her to finish her schoolwork for the past week, and that on her way to her car she always seemed to see him sitting on the same bench, facing the direction she parks in. I was admittedly a bit concerned, but it's college, everyone has a routine. Maybe his was to wait for someone outside the library and then go sit on a bench. I told her that I'd go to the library during her study hour with her and do some of my work. If the guy had ill intentions, he'd back off once he sees me with her. Now it's important to note that I don't appear to be physically intimidating at all. I'm very slender and don't look muscular. I figured I probably wasn't going to scare somebody away, but it was worth a shot, and I wanted to comfort her at the time. We go to study, and we're sitting in front of the glass windows that separate the library from the hallway. Suddenly, she nudges my notebook and whispers while looking down at her work. "He's watching us. Look by the staircase doors." I look over, and I see a guy who's at most 35 years old. I figure there's no way he worked there. He just looked way too young. I couldn't tell if he was just in his late 20s or early 30s, but he looked simultaneously youthful, but experienced, if that makes any sense. Not somebody you'd expect to see stalking somebody or anything like that. He was carrying a messenger bag with him, so I figured he might have been a student. Me, thinking quickly and wanting to see if this guy really was stalking my girlfriend, told her to get up and pretend to leave. I told her to leave the library, go downstairs towards the cafe. She listens and gets about 30 seconds down the hall before the man immediately starts following her. I knew right away something was up with this guy, and he was definitely stalking my girlfriend. I rush out of the library, and he's only a few meters down the highway. I, as casually as possible, spark a conversation with this guy, pretending like I recognized him from somewhere. I asked him if I could walk with him, and he said sure. He and I walked downstairs, and kept my girlfriend almost never out of sight. He probably followed 15 meters behind her the whole way down to the cafeteria. He sits down at a table, and I pretend like I have to keep walking, just say the formalities. Goodbye, nice meeting you, and some such. As soon as I get outside the door, I call my girlfriend and tell her to come out here. He was definitely following her. She's really suspicious of me now because I was acting weird. I told her once she gets outside to come around the corner of the building. The doorway is right near that corner, so that he couldn't see where she walked to from inside and would attempt to come around here looking for her. Lo and behold, he comes out about a minute after her and turns into us. I'm standing there with her. He's looking at the two of us. All I can say is, "Why the fuck are you following my girlfriend?" He played it off as a coincidence, but then ramped up his harassment. He texted her that night, saying something like, "Why the fuck was your boyfriend so mouthy with me today?" She didn't even know who it was until she texted him wrong number, and he replied with, "No, it's not. On campus." He started putting letters and gifts in her mailbox and slashed my tires, but stopped waiting outside the library. I hadn't seen him for weeks at this time, but he was completely terrorizing my girlfriend, and I was helpless about it this time, because somehow he was invisible. He was hiding in plain sight apparently, but we just never saw him. I was ready to seriously hurt this guy. The last night I saw him, I was staying at my girlfriend's house, and her family was out late, visiting some of her more distant family that lived about an hour away. It was just us in her house, when suddenly we heard a window shatter. We had locked her bedroom door and called the police, who instructed her to stay on the phone with them. We had no idea who it was. All that was clear was that somebody had just broken into her house. I carry a knife almost everywhere with me, so I pulled that right out. It's a little knife I got as a bachelor gift for my brother's wedding, but I was ready to seriously hurt somebody if they tried hurting me or my girlfriend at this point. We hear him walking around outside the door. Suddenly he starts opening other doors in the house, but never closing them. He checks the pantry, the basement door, his parents' room, and the bathroom. By the time he gets to her bedroom door, we're well aware he's nearby. We found out it was him when he jiggled the door handle and realized it was locked. He started saying through the door, "Oh, what's wrong, honey? Are you scared now? I bet you wish that guy you call your boyfriend was here to protect your pretty self." He kicks the door so hard that the bottom panel cracks. It wasn't broken, just a giant crack through the wood, and she screams. I yell out, too. "I'm here, you fuck! You'll breathe your last breaths in this room if you come in. Get the fuck out of this house and leave us the fuck alone." I did as intimidating a voice as I was able to muster. I was scared, too. Luckily, just as I said that, the police came and arrested the guy. The window he smashed was the sliding door on her glass porch. My girlfriend was severely shaken up, and I was just fucking... my god. I cried a lot, and I was really scared, but at the time I had a ton of adrenaline running through me. I was really ready to kill him that night, and that mindset is something I will remember forever. Once you're actually in a situation where you might have to defend yourself and kill somebody, you really begin to understand just how much animal instinct dictates your behavior. It's terrifying to even know I was capable of thinking that way. My ex-girlfriend and I are still very close friends to this day, but we don't talk about this ever. I know her memory of this still messes with her, because sometimes she still sends me paranoid text messages about seeing someone looking at her. The saddest thing that she sent me was that she's afraid to go into her house because she walked in and all the doors were wide open, just like the guy had left them that night. She's terrified of doors being open around her because she thinks people could be hiding in those rooms or that somebody had been searching for her. We broke up for reasons unrelated to this, but I still love her as a friend, and she'll always be my closest friend. We very well could have died that night. I'm really happy that she told me about this guy when she did, too. The price of tires is infinitely less important to me than her life. The guy ended up being a recidivist who had been in prison before for breaking into a girl's house that he'd been stalking before stalking laws actually existed, so he'd only been charged with breaking an entry. How the fuck do these people get released back into the public? They should be treated at a psych hospital. He didn't have anything with him the night of the break-in, except for a box of trash bags in his car. To give some context, I was 14 when this happened, and I was with my best friend Holly, who was 17. We're both very small ladies, and obviously, at the time, very young. It was a Friday night, and Holly and I went to her friend's place for a little get-together. Despite both being underage, we drank way too much, and by the time we decided to go home at midnight, we weren't very steady on our feet. We lived in a small city in Canada, and for the most part it was pretty safe. I was spending the night at Holly's place, and as we were drunk, we took the short bus ride home. The closest bus stop was about 1 kilometer from her place. The bus stop is a park-and ride, so there was a well-lit parking lot, and the rest of the walk was on a quiet residential road with no street lighting. We walked this route heaps, and didn't think twice about walking in on this particular night either. We got off the bus, both still drunk and enjoying our walk back to hers. We walked through the parking lot, which had a few cars parked within, and started off into the darkness. Everything was pretty ordinary thus far, but I noticed Holly suddenly got very quiet and started to walk faster. I figured she was sobering up and keen to get home, so I started walking faster to keep pace. She looked at me, seeing I was oblivious to my surroundings, and she told me she thought someone was following us. I looked back to see there was indeed a person walking right behind us, but a decent distance away. Nobody else had gotten off the bus with us, and nobody was around when we got off the bus either, so we reckoned this person must have come from the parking lot. We both started to sober up real quick, but trying to rationalize the situation against our gut instincts. We looked behind us every few seconds to gauge the situation, and could see that the person was swiftly gaining on us. We could make out now even that the person was a fully grown male. We were both starting to panic and run scenarios through our head when Holly suddenly told me we needed to run because he had a bat. We both started running, and as I did, I looked behind me to see that the dude did indeed have a large baseball bat with him. I can't remember if he was running too, or if he was just very swiftly speedwalking, but he was still keeping up with us. I remember feeling this horrible urgency and panic overcome me, and survival instincts kick in. Holly and I both knew we couldn't stop running until we were inside with the door locked. I know from running track that if you look behind you while running, you slow down immensely, so against all my instincts, I didn't look behind me even once, and after what seemed like running for ages, we finally made it home. We ran into the house shaking and crying. Luckily, Holly's dad was awake. We told him what happened, and he had us call the cops while he got in his car. He wanted to drive the road to see if he could find the dude and get a better description for the police, but somehow on the way back he didn't see him at all. I'm not sure when we lost him, or if he followed us all the way to her house, but nothing ever came of the situation. It's been over 10 years since this went down. I try not to think about what could have happened, but the thought of a grown man waiting in his car with a baseball bat for vulnerable people to walk by gives me goosebumps to this very day. What is up, guys? Blue Spooky here, as always. Thank you guys so much for watching, especially if you made it this far to the end of the video. As always, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. If you have any criticisms on how I can make the videos better, or any thoughts about it in general, please be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. As well, in the description below the video, there will be links to all of my social media, including my Facebook, Gmail, Twitter, and Twitch accounts. If you guys want to chat, please be sure to send me a message on any of those. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Please be forewarned though that I tend to go on Facebook less than the others, so it may take me a little bit longer to respond to you. If you want to send in a story, or you have a story that you'd like to be read, please be sure to take a look at the description and send me a message on any one of those sites. If you do decide to send in a story, please be sure to include the name of the story if it has one, the theme of the story if it has one as well, and how you would like to be credited in the video the story appears in, and how you would like to be credited in the description of the video the story appears in. And please be sure to include as much detail as you are comfortable with, and make sure to follow proper grammar at least a little bit. That way it will be easier for me to read, and it will also be long enough to put into a video. If you guys are curious about the music used in the video, it's always listed in the description in the order which it appears, and I have links to the artists as well. I usually use Doblato Studios and Miyuji, so that's usually what you're going to find there. If you're curious about the art in the video, My art guy Alan always does all of my art for the channel. He's a very good friend of mine, and I have links to all of his social media as well, so if you like his stuff, be sure to check him out. He does commissions as well, I'm pretty sure, so if you like it, you can definitely get some good quality products from him. I don't think there's too much new updates today, other than the fact that I'm very excited for the PlayStation 5 coming out, and I just ordered Pikmin 3 on the Switch, so hopefully that gets here soon. I've been waiting like 3 years for that because nobody bought a Wii U. So, yeah, that's my news for now. Be sure to let me know how you guys are doing as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great day.